What's up, everybody? Lou here from Hypocritic on the show floor at PAX East 2024. We are here with Josh and Matthias from Enum Games to talk about their game, Belly Bumpers. Thank you so much for taking a little time out to talk about it. So for those who don't know, what is Belly Bumpers?
Belly Bumpers is a 2 to 8 player party game where your belly is your weapon. So you eat food to get a bigger belly, which makes you stronger. And if you don't eat enough food, you'll become too weak and get knocked out.
It's a ton of fun, and I think very unique from the perspective of the core gameplay mechanic, which is using your weight to kind of literally throw your weight around and bump people off the stage.
Right.
Can you talk about how that core mechanic was developed and how you sort of designed the game around that basic idea?
I guess we decided we wanted the belly to be the main gameplay, so we went back and forth where maybe you have power-ups and pick up weapons, but then we ultimately went back to it's just your belly, and that this is Belly Bumpers. So we just started playing around with eating food and different foods and how they would control the player. And then we decided we wanted it to work like two ways, where you eat too much, you could die, or if you don't eat enough, you can die. And we tried to really just make that the main focus of the game.
I just want to add that it was a totally different project in the beginning. Also, it was more like, I don't know, they had weapons and stuff like axes and shields and all kinds of weird stuff. So as I understood it, it was also you just seeing, those big kind of sumo inflatable guys and then just sort of making a game around that in a way. Yeah, that you talked a lot about that back then, at least.
Yeah, so maybe talk about refining those mechanics a little bit. You mentioned that it started off in a very different direction, and then you kind of hone in on some of the more basic mechanics and what you ultimately see here now. What was that process like in terms of fine-tuning the gameplay and getting it to the state that it's currently in?
So it was a lot of testing, like how strong are the bumps when you don't have bellies? How strong are they when the belly is full? And then we thought we had to add a few extra things like the smacking and the blocking to allow players to have different forms of counterplay, which led to this sort of triangle where smacks break blocks, blocks block belly bumps, and belly bumps can kind of go right through the smack. So just, I guess, a lot of testing and just playing around with how strong they are at the different belly levels.
Yeah, that'll do it. And now I want to touch on the art style briefly because I think that really helps sell the whole kind of mechanic and bring it all to life, really emphasizing, again, the physicality of the game. Can you talk a little bit about how that was refined and how you ultimately kind of came to have the game look as it does?
Can I also say something about that? Because I think it's important that we mention Beto and all his...
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, but just because we have so we have this really talented guy named Beto. El Betico is his handle if you want to look him up. He's an amazing artist. And he sort of came up with this whole art style, which I feel is like an extension of what he just does in, like, he just doodles all the time. And then initially it was like, you and I, because we worked on Who's Your Daddy, and then he just sort of started drawing these things in his spare time. He wasn't even involved. He just started sending you sketches of the guys, and he made these super expressive, crazy, like SpongeBob kind of style faces, and it just clicked that that's what it should be, But we're still trying to refine the art style even more. We want to make it more gross and more like, those big expressions you have in Adventure Time or SpongeBob where they sometimes go like, and then, sort of if we can get those in the game, that would be super fun, I think. But I think it all comes down to Beto. He should be here to talk about that, really.
Yeah, he should.
Yeah, I think gross is probably a good way to describe it. It's a very physical, you can almost feel that art style coming through the screen, and that's great. That means it's really effective, right? So that's awesome there. Now, in terms of people getting their hands on it and physically playing, I think it's a fairly unique kind of core mechanic and gameplay style to kind of wrap your head around. Bringing it out to trade shows like PAX, having people who probably haven't heard of it get their hands on it for the first time, what are players' reactions? Do they quickly kind of pick it up and understand how it works? Do they react at all to the sort of art style or the physicality of it? What do you see?
Yeah, we mostly see people tend to pick it up. They understand the bumping right away, but some people seem to struggle with if you're too bloated, you die, or if you're too skinny, you die. Yeah. So we're still working to refine that and make that clear. And then the art style, people laugh a lot, especially when they see them get big. But we do want to push the gross factor a bit more. We don't think we see anybody grossed out really. But
we gotta make them bigger and skinnier. I feel like also to really, because right now we have this mechanic where if you as you lose health, you also lose color. And we probably need to make it a little bit clearer still that they get really skinny. Like they get skinny, but they should be like after a bypass surgery or something, like really skinny.
Yeah, so just very exaggerated in either direction.
That's where we're going at least.
Which makes a lot of sense. I think it's a very kind of exaggerated style to begin with, so lean into it, right?
Yeah.
So that's all encouraging. Now, in terms of your studio itself, Enum Games, not the only project that you have, and you mentioned before we started rolling that there are a lot of other things that you're sort of working on as this progresses too. Tell me a little bit about your kind of daily role in not just this, but working on games at the studio in general.
Sure. So other than Belly Bumpers, Enum Games is developing a Unity package to help indies with console ports. So we use that package in Belly Bumpers and in Who's Your Daddy. We handled Who's Your Daddy's ports to Xbox and PlayStation, which is coming soon. So it's really just those two things right now, where Belly Bumpers is our first upcoming game title, and then we're developing that package to offer porting services to indies.
That's awesome, and I want to touch on that maybe a little more if we can.
Sure.
What sort of benefit does that package provide, if we could go under the hood maybe a little bit? What sort of benefits does it provide in terms of making that porting process easier for developers, and what sort of gains or additive kind of features do they get? Basically, how does it make their lives easier in terms of how much easier is it, what sort of barriers does that break down, that sort of thing?
Okay. So the package, it gives one API for all the gaming platform services. So, for example, Xbox and PlayStation have a list of requirements called XRs and TRCs. And that's stuff like if you want players to be able to log in with their accounts or unlock achievements or cloud save files. So with our package, you would code that once, and then you can just select, if you're using Unity, you would select, I want Xbox Live or I want PlayStation Network, and then they can build with one code base.
Okay, so a lot of simplification, it sounds like. Okay, great. Very cool. So then, last question. Belly Bumpers, when can players get their hands on it and on what platforms?
What do you think?
We're thinking 2025.
We want to make it like a complete package, not just like a small party game, but something with a lot of depth and, it supports, I think we haven't even shown this supports 8 players as well, so we really want to make it like, a big thing, like a big multiplayer party game, because there's not a lot of those right now, and it should be the complete package before we release it for sure.
Sounds great. We'll be looking forward to it.
Yes.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Keep it tuned here to Hypocritic GG for more from PAX East all weekend long.